The Central Bank of Nigeria seems to be stepping up its supervision and control of financial services in Africa's largest economy. At the end of the Monetary Policy Committee meeting on Tuesday, the bank's governor, Godwin Emefiele, announced that foreign currency will no longer be sold to Bureau de Change or BDCs in Nigeria. This is a repeat of an earlier action taken in 2016 by the bank to stop the imbalance between the parallel market and the official channels. At that time, it led to devaluation of the naira. Now, a few years later, the financial regulator has brought that policy back. Before this announcement, the CBN also rolled out some restrictions for mobile money operators in the country. These new regulations are meant to separate the activities of the various financial institutions who seem to be offering similar services as deposit money banks. There's also the decisions of the Monetary Policy Committee to look at in relation to Nigeria's economy. What effect will these new moves have on the Nigerian economy? Today, the Central Bank of Nigeria is in the spotlight. I'm Tolulakwe Adeleru Balogun. Welcome. This is Business Edge. Now, joining me from Cairo, Egypt, is Tokwe Fasua. He's an economist as well as the CEO of Global Analytics Consulting. Tokwe, once again, welcome to Business Edge. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning.
All right, let's start with this. So we're seeing what seems to be moves with Nigeria going back in time to solve either present-day issues or recurrent issues. When this policy was introduced in 2016 and also around early 2020 as well, we saw the consequences, but maybe some have forgotten. What were the consequences, particularly of the CBN at that point in time, banning Forex sales to the BDCs?
Well, the whole idea of bringing in the BDCs or bringing them back into the market is to sort of stabilize the market and try to make FX available to sundry users, customers, and so on. Especially those who need it for what they call Form A transactions, invisible trade, that is for travel and school fees and healthcare and all of that. So that's the reason. But of course, my view is that the work of central bank is from time to time to try out policies, and if they watch how policies are going, they reserve the right to reverse the policy. So at that point, they try to stabilize the market. But what they're probably looking at now is that the aim of that policy has been defeated.
All right, so now we're in 2021. The CBN is announcing once again that it's going to ban the sale of Forex to the BDCs. It's also said that the parallel market had become a conduit for illicit Forex flows and graft. The bank also announced that it was suspending the processing of applications for BDC licenses, with the governor saying that they've been receiving almost 5,000 fresh applications every single month. Apparently, it's a very lucrative business. Now, in terms of the criticisms, in terms of the criticisms of the BDCs, which are the same in 2021 as they were in 2016, it seems that not much has been done by the financial regulator to address these issues and the criticisms, as well as the use of the BDCs possibly for corruption and illicit flows. What do you think about that?
Well, see, Nigeria is holding a world record, okay? And we're not holding that world record in any of the Olympic sports. We're holding that world record in the area of having the most BDCs of any country in the world. I reckon that there may be as many as 9,000 to 10,000 bureau de change in Nigeria. When I did my analysis several years back, I think in 2016, I let them know, the Central Bank and everybody that was kept to listen, that the UK had 145 BDCs in the whole of the United Kingdom, 145 brands, okay? And the UK is a tourist center where, more than 100 million people visit that country every year for tourism. I try to do the research for US as well. I realized that you can't even find a BDC in the US except you went to an international airport. And, in a place like New York, which is also a tourist center, they have 40 BDCs operating in New York. And there we are. Nigeria has 9,000 or perhaps 10,000, which, as you just said, now 5,000 new requests. Look, it's a big joke that needed to be ended. That joke needed to be ended. It was a criminal enterprise. Everybody wanted a BDC license. Many people had multiples of BDC licenses. Why are we kidding ourselves? And look, people will complain about how Nigeria is this, Nigeria is that, but we are also part of the problem. And people want such a policy to continue. It is not a bankable policy. It is a non-policy. And of course, the earlier the Central Bank woke up to say, let's do something about this, the better. I always insisted that there was nothing the BDCs were doing or whoever they were selling to that the banks could not service. Of course, the banks also have their own problems, and the Central Bank has to be sure that they are ready to solve some of these things and help the customers. I was coming to Cairo and I approached 3 banks. I could mention their name here, and it was all frustration from each of them. And even as at that time, the policy was operating that they could sell to customers. Some of them said they needed 2 weeks notice. Some of them said they needed a week notice. The bottom line was they weren't selling. Now, in Central Bank is saying that they're ready to service, and mind you, this time not many people are traveling.
Yeah.
Imagine if the CBN was selling a foreign exchange to let's say 9,000 BDCs at $30,000 every week. That's about $180 million every week for service to people who are traveling. Where are people traveling to since COVID? People aren't traveling that much. So this is a policy that needs to be. Look, we don't need more than 50 or so of those BDCs working alongside the banks, well established with offices everywhere, and the Central Bank can then supervise what they do. I tell you what, those BDCs were not selling to even the customers. Somehow the money gets collected in cash, and also sold off into the black market, and the huge spread is what those guys were making. So it's not a policy that's continuing.
Tokwe, I like the fact that you brought up your personal experience, because that was leading me to my next question. So banks are now going to receive the share of Forex that had been allocated and sold to the BDCs, and customers can now also deposit Forex in their accounts. And we've seen situations like your own where people will try to go the legal route, the supposed route to go and get the Forex. And a lot of times you find that the system sort of pushes Nigerians to go and seek out the parallel markets or the black market, because the banks are not actually servicing the customers when it comes to these issues. We're also seeing that the CBN says that it will also monitor very closely the activities of the banks in regards to this. But I want to get your opinion on this. Overall, do you think that this is a good policy? Because there are those who are saying that the CBN has been courageous with a rare move of courage, and there are those who are saying that all the CBN has to do is hold out against the pressure that is likely coming. And we haven't heard yet from the Association of Bureau de Change operators in Nigeria, but we're waiting for a comment from them. They're saying that until they see a circular, that the announcement, which was actually televised, is just a rumor. But overall, do you think that this is a really good policy for Nigeria?
It's a very good policy. It's a solid policy. It's the way it's done everywhere. I tell you that Nigeria is holding a world record in the number of bureau de change, meaning that everybody is just gaming the system. Having a bureau de change is not supposed to be a joke. People have bureau de change, they have no offices. It's not something you can continue with, all right? So now mind you that the Central Bank knows that they can cage the banks properly. Okay, no bank MD will allow some desk officer selling $4,000 Forex to take his shares, all right? But we have seen in the past that CBN can easily ban banks in Forex, Forex businesses. And, we're talking about BTA. These are very small amounts of money. Yeah. No bank MD would want them to mess him up to the extent of either the Central Bank is suspending them from even being able to partake in import transactions, which is where the big money is, okay, or even sacking them. So, and the banks, we know how many there are. 20-something banks can be easily controlled. Yeah. But when you have 9,000 BDCs and 5,000 new applications every month, Nigerians always think we are smart. And the just you're just getting the system running around, and then coming around to tell us how Nigeria is bad. Who is bad? It's Nigerians that are bad. So we cannot expect something. Let's think properly about how countries do this. Okay? How countries do this, it's not supposed to be a bedlam. It's supposed to be a very organized business and all. See, the BDCs were supposed to bridge the gap between the so-called black market and the bank, which they have refused, which they have not been able to do. And somehow the BDCs now became black marketers themselves. We've always had the black market, the guys that stand on the road, and let me tell you, those guys are going to be difficult to take out. Why? Because if you wanted to change $50, you don't want to go in the bank. You want to drive in your car and just change it through your window. And no bank can afford it, except the banks begin to have drive-through for people to be able to do that, okay? If you don't have that drive-through, those guys are going to continue to be there. But they are different from BDCs. Then the BDCs came, and people want, we want to have 50,000 BDC licenses in Nigeria. We have to just stop the joke at some point.
All right, so before I go on a break, because I want to wrap up this issue so we can get into the MPC meeting and the mobile money operators. We know that the ban will put more pressure on the naira. We've seen the reaction in the market. The naira is currently about 505 naira to $1 right now. We've talked about the fact that customers like yourself have complained about accessing Forex from the banks. The CBN said they will monitor. But in terms of the short term, the immediate knee-jerk reactions, what do you think we can expect from the markets and the economy reacting to this, as well as the banks as they settle into an extension of their role, as it might be?
I want the bank to, first of all, help the customer. See, if they help the customers, the normal average Nigerian, everything will settle down, okay? I went to 3 banks, okay? Access Bank told me, I forget it, just to get $1,000 to travel, all right? GT Bank was a bit more forthcoming, but they said, just try, we don't know how it's going to turn out. Sterling Bank said, okay, they need at least 1 week. I'm mentioning their names. Some of them, they are MDs, I know. So now, when customers face all of these frustrations, then they are going to continue feeding whatever black market there is.
Yes.
There's nothing that the bank cannot do to just sell FX. So, of course, in the interim, they are going to see a spike in the black market. Okay, but I believe that spike will just be for a while. Let's continue. We're going to continue to have those things. In places like Maiduguri, they used to keep the forex on the mat and sell. Okay, that is a forex market. Maiduguri was always a forex market for those who are doing business into Chad, into Nigeria. Those ones are not going to leave. I personally have no problems with those guys. But these organized, supposedly BDCs, and 5,000 new applications every month, about 10,000 of them already existing, is organized criminality. It cannot continue.
Okay. All right. So, Tokwe, we're taking a break now. When we come back, we'll get into some of the things that happened at the monthly Monetary Policy Committee meeting. We know that they've decided to hold the rates steady. We'll also look at some of the new restrictions and rules for mobile money operators in the country. My guest, Tokwe Fasua, is still going to be with me right after this break. Business Edge continues. Stay with us. Economist Tokwe Fasua and the CEO of Global Analytics Consulting is also still with me right here on Business Edge. So, Tokwe, let's look at the MPC meeting that finished on Tuesday. So, the MPC retained the monetary policy rate at about 11.5% and also retained the cash reserve ratio as well as the liquidity ratio at 27.5% and 30% respectively. The committee said the move was expected to allow further economic growth, despite the fact that Nigeria has a 4-year high inflation. And this also comes after the country exited recession late last year into this year as well. Do you think the committee is on track with holding the rate steady?
Yeah, I kind of sympathize with them because, the concern of that committee, is managing inflation. Already we are beginning to see some disinflation because inflation has come from almost a 10-year high of 18.17, and now we're talking about 17.75, with expectation that inflation will reduce, with time. So they don't want to toy with a lot of things. Now, if they reduce the MTR and the market takes it, and there's a lot more lending to be done, what that will do is to drive up inflation. And if they increase PR and the market takes the cue, that means that they are punishing borrowers, because the banks will quickly add a percentage points to their lending rate. You know, they can't afford to toy with that, and so they are working on eggshell, and that's why they are maintaining policy as well. You know, to see how things will pan out. Like you also mentioned, they are also looking at growth.
Yeah.
So luckily we're out of recession, but we're still doing about 0.51% GDP growth, which is non-growth if you ask me, because it doesn't even cover for inflation. I mean, for our population growth rate of 2.6%, not to talk of inflation at 17.75%. I've always said that what they should do, they should look at how they can recalibrate the economy for double-digit growth. Okay, but that's still a long way ahead. And I think what they need is a lot more imagination, but also the fiscal policy is what is failing Nigeria. Fiscal policies are failing Nigeria. We're not seeing commensurate drive from the fiscal end.
Okay, so you talk about the fiscal policy failing Nigeria and not seeing commensurate drive. So on this inflation issue, the governor of the bank, Godwin Emefiele, noted that although headline inflation remained above the CBN's target range of between 6 and 9%, the bank's various interventions in the economy would help push inflation downward. So a lot of people are asking, what are these interventions that the CBN has had? Is it even their role to intervene somewhat in the economy in the manner in which they're doing? And if they are intervening, do you think it's having the desired effect?
Well, I don't think intervention will drive down inflation. In fact, it will drive up inflation. What those interventions are doing is to put money in the hands of people, to try to help SMEs, to try to help some sectors and so on. And so for as long as you keep pushing money out to those sectors, that means that inflation is going to be up. The thing to do is to find how those interventions can also dovetail into productivity, more productivity from Nigeria, importation and all of that. That's what we are trying to do. For as long as you're doing that, inflation will be high, because you are companies to be able to pay salaries, those who would have not been able to pay, all of those stuff. So people are going to have money. But if you ask about is it their role to? Of course, it's been noted by people like Paul Krugman, Thomas Friedman. These are key economists around the world. At every point in time when an economy is in trouble, central banks seems to morph into fiscal policy. Okay, and central banks give a monetary policy to grab a bit more of fiscal policy. It is what is now called modern monetary policy, MMP. Modern monetary policy is a scenario where you are seeing monetary policy making changes into fiscal policy, because you can't trust the guys to do enough. For example, things like these interventions that they did in the Fed in the States some time back, those are incursions that they made. So for as long as you have a on your hand, you cannot stop the central bank making those interventions. However, they also have to ask themselves, and they must be ready to follow up all of the policies to say, are these policies resulting in higher productivity? Because higher productivity is what results in growth. Yeah. So I say that the growth is what we should target. Inflation will always be of growth, okay? But if we don't target growth, we just end up driving up inflation, or papering over the issue, but the next problems will continue to exist.
All right, so let's move to something that the CBN did in early July. So it released its framework and guidelines on mobile money services in Nigeria. Now, these new regulations mean that MMOs, mobile money operators, can now operate savings wallets, issue e-money, recruit and manage agents. They can also acquire cards and any other activities that are permitted by the CBN. Now, some say this new phase of the mobile money operations is basically long overdue, and others say the Nigerian tech space is still a bit immature and porous in order to accommodate it. What do you think about this recent move by the CBN on mobile money operators?
Well, the idea of mobile money operators and so on is essentially to drive up financial income, to deepen banking, in the country, to ensure that people who don't have access to regular banking able to have that. So I think basically what that is trying to target, Of course, yeah, in terms of the tech enablement and the ability for us to drive this with our technology, I think we have very smart people in that area. I saw that their vision is aligned with economic development. I see no problem with that. But if it's about something that we saw with the BDC, people are going there to try and make a fast buck. There's no fast buck to be made. The people are ready to invest and wait a bit of time before they see the possibility from that. It must be driven by the developmental agenda of driving up economic inclusion, financial inclusion for the many poor people of this country. I don't see any major risk coming. That in fact is making the banks also see, and some of the banks are also making moves to use of these MMOs and other people they can acquire to be part of their portfolio, so that it will not result in threat to their own existence in a short period of time.
Very true. All right, I quickly want to get your thoughts on some of the restrictions for the mobile money operators. And now some of these restrictions include that they cannot grant loans, they cannot give advances or guarantees directly or indirectly, they cannot accept foreign currency deposits, they cannot deal in foreign exchange market, they can also not carry out insurance underwriting or accept any closed scheme electronic value, sort of like airtime, as a form of deposit or payment. These are just a few of these restrictions. There are those who are saying that these restrictions are actually going to restrict the operations of the MMOs rather than actually organize it and allow them to really grow. What do you think about that?
Oh, come on. That's what I said. Everything is about fast buck, and so people have to be very, very careful about that. Yeah. Okay? If it's a MMO license is not a bank license. They shouldn't expect to come and foreign exchange. And the same people will, why are you trying to damage the business of the bank? Like these FX policies, people say, they're going to let the banks make more money. Look, bottom line should be what is the global standard. So we should follow. The MMOs are not supposed to be in foreign exchange. They're not supposed to be issuing insurance. They're not supposed to be issuing guarantees. These are clear. So if you think that you like that license, there's nothing wrong with it.
Simple as that.
If you're looking for the fast money, everybody wants to have a big jeep and erect a big building and all. People are doing finance in Nigeria and they want to do as if they are Nigeria's commercial bank size. It won't work. They're going to end up running the place aground. So I think that there must be demarcation in the market.
Yes.
So that in the era of universal banking, now niche banking has become fintech that gives banks a lot of run for their money, all right? In the deposit taking area, even in the loan area, there are now that are doing very easy, quick people are moving loans, to, and the banks are losing business. In fact, the banks are not interested in that business.
Okay, I apologize for interrupting you. We're going to have to wrap up here. I know we tried to get through at least 3 issues that the CBN is dealing with, and they're on the front burner. And that is, of course, the announcement of a suspension of activities of BDCs, the results from the MPC meeting, as well as the announcements for the mobile money operators. I want to say a very big thank you for your time today, and I hope you enjoy Cairo.
Thank you very much. I'll try.
All right, thank you. We'll be wrapping things up, and of course, you know how we do that. We do that with a few stories we're keeping our eyes on. NC4 to Watch is up next. And a few stories we have for you that we're watching very closely. We start in the southern part of the continent, where the recent unrest in South Africa is likely to shave off about 0.7% of the headline GDP growth in 2021. But strong commodity prices will continue to support the economy. And this is coming from S&P Global Ratings. Now, protests in support of former President Jacob Zuma broke out this month when he handed himself over to authorities to start a 15-month jail term. Moving on now, Egypt's economy is growing at 5% in the current fiscal year that ends in June next year, according to financial analysts. Gross domestic product of the Arab world's most populous country was seen growing at 5.5% in the fiscal year that ends June 30, 2023. Now, the government said it expects the economy to grow by 2.8% in the 2020-21 fiscal year. The Biden administration has announced a new push to expand business ties between U.S. companies and Africa. Now, the new push will focus on building needed digital, health, and physical infrastructure on the continent. The new initiative, according to a senior director for Africa at the White House National Security Council, Dana Banks, I beg your pardon. And finally, number 4 on the list, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has pledged to boost trade volume with Angola during a joint press conference with his Angolan counterpart while Lourenço in the Turkish capital. He said that trade volume with Angola was $176 million, which is low for both countries, and both have agreed to reach a $500 million trade volume as a first stage. And that's it. You know, the show continues Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. West African time, when we touch base with the biggest financial and economic stories coming from here on the African continent. I'm Tolu Lokwe Adelari Balogun. I'll see you again soon.